If you believe Donald Trump's political machine controls the absolute definition of American masculinity, watch what happens when a man built entirely of muscle and cinematic box office leverage decides to strip that illusion bare on national television. By midnight, the MAGA-aligned podcasters who had spent weeks mocking the actor had gone entirely silent. By morning, the unedited video had been ripped from the late-night broadcast and shared 40 million times across platforms the political right assumed they owned. By the following week, the entire concept of the alpha male political brand had been permanently fractured by a single, perfectly executed teardown. All of it started because one campaign assumed a Hollywood star would simply absorb their digital attacks without stepping into the ring. We have to go back to the days preceding the broadcast to understand the sheer weight of what is about to happen. The atmospheric pressure inside the digital ecosystem of the 2024 election felt completely suffocating. The algorithms hanging heavy, thick, and undeniably toxic. The brilliant screens of millions of smartphones pushed a relentless, clinical illumination that bleached the nuance from the political conversation. The MAGA machinery, sensing an imminent threat from celebrity endorsements, had launched a massive, coordinated attack on Dave Bautista, flooding his feeds with insults aimed at his career, his loyalty, and his manhood. The digital architects stood in the shadows of their podcast studios, realizing they had successfully dominated the news cycle with their manufactured outrage. There was no gentle political debate, no polite disagreement. The complete absence of grace acted as a suffocating physical presence across the internet. Donald Trump's entrance into the narrative happens through this suffocating digital shadow, his power attempting to claim the territory of modern masculinity from his secure compounds. He had spent years successfully cultivating an image as a ruthless, untouchable patriarch, a brand heavily amplified by right-wing influencers who viewed his unapologetic cruelty as strength. The screens across the country flickered to life, displaying Trump at a recent rally, physically expanding his footprint to own every possible inch of the camera's frame. His eyes lock onto his supporters with a flat, unwavering superiority, a gaze designed to shrink any critical presence in the arena. He leans immediately into the microphone, delivering a line heavily disguised as casual dominance. These Hollywood guys, they act tough in the movies, but they wouldn't last 5 minutes in the real world with real men. He launches directly into a relentless verbal barrage on the video feeds, stacking his attacks in a deliberate rhythm designed to overwhelm the acoustic space of his rallies. Without me protecting the country, these weak, overpaid actors would just hand everything over to the radical left, he projects, his voice echoing sharply off the arena's acoustic paneling. He pivots seamlessly to a deeply personal dismissal, waving a hand dismissively while calling his critics failing, overrated partisans desperately clinging to relevance because they cannot accept his dominance. He claims total authority over the environment, loudly reminding the cheering crowd that he dictates the culture, runs the strongest political movement in history, and certainly does not need to tolerate a lecture from men who play dress-up for a living. People tune in because they want absolute winners. And quite frankly, there is nobody in Hollywood who even knows what winning looks like anymore, he concludes, crossing his arms definitively. Through this entire coordinated onslaught, and through the frantic attempts of political strategists to manage the fallout, Dave Bautista had stayed completely, terrifyingly silent. He simply absorbed the digital barrage, his expression an unreadable mask of absolute calculation. A prominent podcaster pacing his studio nervously adjusted his microphone, the collective tension becoming a physical weight. The silence stretched out over the week, turning the administration's booming rhetoric into a hollow echo chamber of its own profound insecurity. Then, Bautista finally moves, stepping not onto a debate stage, but into a boxing ring set up specifically for a Jimmy Kimmel broadcast. He shifts his massive weight slightly, leaning into the heavy bag, and when he speaks directly to the camera, his voice drops significantly lower, entirely devoid of any theatrical Hollywood projection. A lot of men seem to think that Donald Trump is some kind of tough guy. He's not. I mean, look at him. The digital landscape instantly goes dead quiet, the air freezing in the lungs of every single observer. The massive production screen behind him on the broadcast bypasses the show's glossy graphics package to display a raw, stark reality check. Bautista begins dismantling the physical facade, noting with cold precision that the former president wears more makeup than a country music legend and whines incessantly about minor inconveniences. Displayed here in stark, silent clarity, the teardown lands like a physical blow to the campaign's core identity. Bautista does not raise his voice into a scream. He simply asks a devastating question about how a man claiming absolute strength relies on the architecture of cosmetic enhancement and constant victimhood to survive. Trump's immediate digital response, triggered the moment the segment hits the internet, is a loud demand for his followers to cancel the broadcast, calling the actor a pathetic train wreck. Bautista counters calmly on the video, letting the digital demand hang in the dead air for a brutal 5-second pause before he quietly delivers his ultimate undeniable observation. A low murmur ripples through the political blogs, a collective realization that the actor is actively daring the entire MAGA ecosystem to prove him wrong. Bautista reaches slowly toward the camera, moving with the deliberate precision of a fighter operating on an exposed nerve. He points out the sheer absurdity of the tough guy image, reminding the audience that Trump had his wealthy father pay a doctor to invent bone spurs to avoid military service, and that the supposed alpha male is visibly terrified of birds. He stares into the lens, tapping his wrapped knuckles against his palm in a slow, rhythmic challenge. The camera pushes in tight on the motion, an undeniable physical manifestation of his absolute refusal to be intimidated by keyboard warriors. The screen on the broadcast shifts again, displaying a meticulously documented visual timeline connecting the exact moments of Trump's most aggressive public posturing to simultaneous massive surges of complaints about the temperature of his water or the lighting in the room. The campaign's digital proxies try to talk over the visual evidence online, their rhetoric rising in pitch as they dismiss the segment as a desperate Hollywood hoax. Bautista slows his cadence down even further on screen, forcing the digital space to absorb the sheer weight of the verified contradictions. The tension online is so thick it feels actively dangerous. A raw audio recording suddenly overrides the standard political commentary. It is a captured moment from a recent rally. Trump's own voice, stripped of equalization, complaining bitterly that the stage lights are too bright and demanding they be turned off immediately, acting, as Bautista notes, like a 5-year-old behind the wheel of a truck. The audience is physically hit by the recording, a collective, sharp intake of breath vibrating through the internet. Trump posts frantically that the audio is illegally obtained and heavily spliced by deep state operatives. Bautista does not argue. He simply smiles, a cold, forensic expression that proves the footage is entirely, unequivocally unaltered. A former campaign advance staffer who had observed years of the former president's backstage behavior later provided a statement that went immediately viral. His testimony was entirely procedural, detailing exactly how the staff had to meticulously manage Trump's environment to prevent emotional meltdowns over minor physical discomforts. "I rehearsed walking away 6 times in the parking garage before I finally found the courage to quit," the staffer admitted, his text-based account carrying remarkable control. Trump aggressively attacked the man's credibility online, yelling that he was fired for gross incompetence. The staffer absorbed the digital assault by letting the facts stand perfectly still. Then, a senior communications assistant, a woman forced to draft the official press releases projecting strength while managing the reality of a deeply insecure candidate, leaked her own account to an independent journalist. Her testimony was emotionally devastating, detailing the intense isolation and the profound professional cost of enforcing a public lie to protect a fragile ego. Trump posted furiously, his digital face flushed dark red, shouting that she was a traitor betraying the loyalty of the movement. The assistant's leaked statement stared directly back at him, laced with absolute titanium. "Silence doesn't protect anyone. It just makes the people who enforce it more comfortable." The internet did not cheer or scream. It broke. One major news outlet picked up the story. Another joined. Within seconds, the digital landscape was consumed by a slow, deliberate wave of sharing. Not for the actor, but for the truth, finally breathing in the open. The timeline splits in half, displaying the manufactured tough guy rhetoric on the left and on the right, matching internal logs proving the campaign had intentionally drafted the attacks on Bautista to distract from Trump's own plummeting numbers with independent voters. The alignment is absolute and undeniable. Trump's online denials shift frantically from screaming about Hollywood elites to yelling that the servers were illegally hacked, a desperate pivot that exposes the sheer, naked panic beneath his anger. His digital collapse unfolds across multiple, undeniable metrics. The frequency of his posts becomes heavily erratic, his rhetoric rising and falling in rapid, shallow bursts of capitalization. His arguments, previously gripping a semblance of patriarchal authority, begin wiping frantically at the narrative, attempting to claim he never even cared about the actor's opinion. His digital posture slumps inward, his broad threats stiffening and shrinking as he leans away from the visual evidence of the massive, unedited teardown dominating the trending topics. His focus darts aggressively around the platform, refusing to settle on Bautista, the leaked testimonies, or the raw rally footage, eventually going completely, terrifyingly silent. His verbal progression spirals from confident demand to accusing Kimmel of an illegal ambush, dropping into a procedural complaint about internet regulations, attempting a weak burst of bravado about his golf game, and finally landing in total, absolute quiet. Bautista looks directly into the camera, his expression entirely neutral. The evidence is on the table. The timeline is on the screen. The reality speaks for itself. Your move. Trump's feed remains completely still. The aftermath escapes the digital ecosystem like a controlled detonation. Backstage, the veteran podcasters who had attacked Bautista stand completely frozen, their phones lighting up as they watch the online metrics in stunned disbelief. Trump's lead communications director is seen typing so frantically on his phone that autocorrect sends pure nonsense to the press pool for 3 straight messages. Within 8 minutes, the first unauthorized clip of the segment hits the internet. Within 20 hours, the full, unedited video reaches 40 million views, each click spreading at viral velocity. Cable news networks immediately cut into their programming, their graphics departments frantically rebuilding the timeline of the manufactured masculinity with red arrows and annotations. Anchors replay Bautista's defiance, allowing his thematic anchor word to sit on the screen for a full segment without adding their own commentary. Trump's counterattack fails to materialize, replaced by a devastating absence from the public conversation. Yet, beneath his previous frantic demands, users reply with screenshots of the exact rally complaints proving the architecture of his insecurity. The public shift is instantaneous. People are no longer debating the politics of the Hollywood endorsement. They are dissecting the psychology of a campaign whose entire alpha male facade shattered on live television. The assistant's testimony about silence becomes a global caption, trending worldwide as the definitive summary of the night. The story does not end with a sudden confession or a changed brand. It burns slow, a digital fire that cannot be contained by late-night executive orders or podcast rants. Because an architecture built on cosmetic toughness only holds until someone finally refuses to look away. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications. The next confrontation is already building, and once you see what's coming, you'll understand why silence is always louder than power.